Prepare to be illuminated.
Hi guys, SkyPoint here, and in this video we're taking an early look at the Space Wolves cards. Now I'm going to warn you, this isn't a full deck walkthrough like some of my others because I haven't had a chance to see these cards in action, and I probably won't do a walkthrough until later in summer after any balance passes have happened on the Space Wolves. Anyhow, let's start by taking a look at the Space Wolves' unique mechanics. They have two of them. The first of those is something called pack. So over here, many of their units have this pack icon, and whenever another one of your units attacks, so remember units includes the Warlord, the pack effect triggers. So like with these dudes here, you could play them onto the board and then attack the enemy Warlord with your own Warlord, and their pack effect will also trigger and they'll deal a bonus 1 damage to the enemy Warlord. And then the second effect, and this is more interesting, is Ward. So Ward means that they cannot be targeted by enemy tactics or abilities. So it means that many of the removal cards in the game, where you can choose which target gets removed, will not affect them at all. And same with many of the damage cards where you have to specify the target of the damage. On the other hand, any card which is not targeted, or which affects the entire board or random targets, those tactics will still affect the Space Wolves. So that's interesting. It narrows a lot of the tactical options when you're facing them. Some factions, such as the Iron Warriors, like Perturabo's own ability is a targeted attack, they might suffer a little bit while facing the wolves, but time will tell. Alright, so let's start getting into it. So we're going to start with their Warlord, starting from the most common and going up to Liman Russ, and then we're going to run through the Space Wolf cards from cheapest to most expensive. Let's start with the Warlords. Othere Weirdmake, or as some people on Discord are calling him, oh hi there Weirdmake. Alright, so let's take a look. In common with all the green Warlords, he has 2 attack and only 30 health. And he actually looks like a pretty defensive guy. First of all, at the end of your turn, he heals 1 to a friendly troop. Now that's actually a pretty powerful ability. It was actually removed from Tariq Tormageddon because it made him unbalanced on top of all of his other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over here, because unlike Tariq, oh hi there Weirdmake is not a... oh god, I just called him oh hi there. Othere Weirdmake is not an aggressive Warlord. In fact, he's quite the opposite. Look at his defensive ability. He heals 2 and gives ward to a target, presumably including himself, for a turn. Now, in general, the healing warlords tend to be less popular because aggressive warlords tend to be favored in this game. But on the other hand, healing and giving ward to a target might turn out to be extremely powerful. So it'll be interesting to see how he ends up getting used. I'm planning on buying the Space Wolves pre-constructed deck as soon as it becomes available in the store, and doing a video with that. And so that deck will come with oh hi there, oh there, Othere Weirdmake, and so we'll get to see him in action in a few hours. So in general, I'm thinking though he's not that great, just because as a defensive healing warlord that tends to be unpopular, but being able to give ward might be a wild card. We'll see how that goes. The next warlord is their epic warlord, Gegor Fellhand, I guess. In common with the epic warlords, he's got 2 attack and 35 health. He has Berserk, and then he has this interesting one, deal damage equal to your attack. He also has high initiative, unlike Othere Weirdmake, who had medium initiative. So high initiative is always good, so I have a feeling he's going to be pretty popular among the Space Wolf warlords. His special ability is sort of interestingly phrased. Most of the time he's going to deal damage, he's going to deal 2 damage, so his 2 energy for 2 damage is very comparable to Gavriel Loken, as well as to the effect Xantar has when he's not attacking a Space Marine or infantry. But there's some times when you'll be able to buff your Warlord's attack, and then this will actually turn into a way of doing damage, with doing 3 or more damage without actually taking any damage in return, which could get interesting. He does have Berserk, meaning he has to attack every turn. That's usually not a disadvantage, because most of the time in this game you're doing something with your Warlord each turn, right? So generally, if you've got Gegor Fell-Handed, you're probably attacking with him each turn, and if you're not attacking, you're spending 2 energy to damage an enemy, two or more points every turn. So I think he's actually pretty solid looking. That high initiative is really nice, and being high initiative and able to deal targeted damage is a pretty neat ability there. So I think he looks pretty good. Now is the guy we've been waiting for, Leman Russ, the Primarch of the Space Wolves. So we'll talk about his reckoning in a moment. Let's start with his basic stats. 2 attack, 40 health like all the Primarchs. He is medium initiative, not high initiative, which is a bit of a drawback for him. But now let's take a look at his energy ability. You spend 2 energy and you gain +1 attack and Bloodthirst until your next turn. Now it's important to understand what this means. At first a lot of people thought that this was overpowered, that he would gain 3 attack and then be able to attack twice with Bloodthirst. But remember, Bloodthirst allows you to act twice in one turn, and if your first action was to give yourself +1 attack, all it means is you can attack once after that, and that's it. You'll only get to attack once in the turn. Or alternatively, you could spend a further 2 energy and give yourself 4 attack, which is a more of a defensive move, so that anyone who attacks you in the following turn, in the enemy turn, is going to take 4 damage instead of 2. And then you end up flipping back to your own turn and going back to your base stats. So that's actually not bad. Like, you can compare him to Angron or Lucius in that way, right? Lucius spends 2 energy to gain +1 attack, but then he can keep repeating that and to get to higher levels of attack, whereas Leman Russ can only ever achieve +1 attack and then make a move. On the other hand, you can also compare that to Angron, who gains +1 attack for no energy cost, but only if he has no units left on the board. So Leman Russ is like Angron, except he gets the bonus if he has units on the board, but he has to pay energy for that. All in all, that generally looks pretty balanced. Now let's take a look at his Reckoning. So we're going to go all the way to the end of the cards for that. So his Reckoning costs 20 energy, which means you can normally never play it, but its cost reduced to 1 if both Warlords have less than 5 health remaining. So a couple of points on this. First of all, it means that Leman Russ is really going to want to have Manifest Destiny in his deck, because it gives him more of a breathing room when trying to achieve his Reckoning. It also means that essentially what he's doing is, towards the end of the game, as both Warlords like getting beaten down, Leman Russ can sort of gain an edge by becoming the Wulfing and try to finish off the fight at that point. So what are the stats on the Wulfing? Well, first of all, he starts on 4 attack, so that's actually pretty powerful. Most Primarchs transform and start on 3 attack. He has Berserk now, so he must attack every turn. Next comes the powerful part. He begets Ward, so he cannot be hit with targeted abilities. That's actually really cool. That's going to mess up a lot of Warlords. For example, Raven Guard cannot sentence him anymore once he gets warded. Perturabo cannot target him with his little massive artillery strike. Exodus cannot shoot him. Things like that. So Ward actually makes this Wolf King form extremely powerful. For 2 energy, he can gain +1 attack, which becomes great, except unlike the base Leman Russ, he cannot attack again from that. So you might give yourself 5 attack, but then you can't actually use that turn. So all in all, it sort of does seem pretty balanced to me, I think. Ward is extremely powerful for Leman Russ as the Wolf King, as does his 4 attack, but his energy ability means that he may not always be able to actually attack every turn if you're trying to make him stronger. Alright, so with that, let's start getting into some of their cards. So let's start with their cheapest cards here. There's a Sigfasti Seeker Squad. These guys are actually interesting. Look at this. They rally and deal 1 damage, which is cool. And if they survive till the next turn, you can return them to your hand for 0 energy and then play them again for 1 energy. I actually like that. It's a cool little effect here. It's a cheap card. They essentially play 1 energy to do 1 damage. which is pretty decent. Like if you imagine like and that's pretty standard among Space Marines. The World Eaters have that card as well, which does one damage for 1 energy. And with these guys, you can just endlessly recycle them if the enemy doesn't manage to kill them. I think it's a pretty cool ability. I like that. The Underverse. Now this one is really interesting. Return your troops to your deck and reduce their cost to 0. Draw a card for each troop returned. So I like this. Like imagine if you've got a board full of troops who are almost dead and you've got some decent cards maybe available and so on. You can just return your troops back to your deck and put them into play at full health for 0 cost later on. So essentially, if you're feeling comfortable with the way the board looks right now, what this card does is it removes all of your units, and so it makes you weaker right now in return for making you really powerful later on. I think this would be great in the late game if you're ever feeling pretty okay about your health, and there's roughly speaking about as many cards left in your deck well, there's only a couple of cards left in your deck, and you can be your new cheap discounted troops can reliably come up in the following turn for you at 0 cost. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how this card turns out and how people end up using it. The other way you can use this is if you've got a super powerful troop like some of the great legendaries later on and it's almost dead, you can sort of recycle them back into your deck and play them again later. So I think this opens up some interesting tactical options. And of course it's really cheap for its effect as well. Thrill of the Hunt. Heal 2 and give stealth 1 turn to a friendly Astartes or infantry unit. That's not bad. I mean, it's nice and cheap. So 1 energy to heal 2 to one of your troops and give them stealth. I think it works out, and the advantage as well is you can give stealth for a turn to one of your powerful units after you play it onto the board to protect it from being attacked. So I think this will get used mostly for that ability. It's like Escape Vent, but it does cost energy, but it has the flexibility of giving one of your troops, of healing your troops as well. Ansvar. These guys are interesting. Their stats look pretty poor at first, 2 energy for 1 attack and 3 health. But their pack mechanic here is what makes it interesting. If you play these guys when just your Warlord is on the board and then you attack with your Warlord, they'll immediately go up to 2-3, like 2 attack 3 health in the turn that you play them. On top of that, let's say if you have your Warlord and another troop on the board, you play Ansvar and then you attack with your Warlord and the other troop, well now their stats have gone up to 3-3, which is very good for a 2 energy unit. So these guys feel like they're going to be a little bit situational, but 3 health actually helps them to stick around against quite a lot of threats. So I think this is going to be a decent card. You'll probably see these guys a lot early on. Canis Helix. This is great. Give ward and +2 attack to a friendly Astartes. This is going to be powerful. Like with ward, you can protect their units against removal. So this one is definitely going to be there in a lot of Space Wolves decks, and it's a nice little bonus. Many times people normally tend to save their bonus cards after they deploy a troop until the next turn when that troop can act. Canis Helix is actually reversing that. You want to put these down before the enemy turn to try to limit the way in which the enemy can destroy your troops. On the other hand, your enemy will then know exactly which troop is going to be buffed during your next attack, so they'll be prioritizing removing whoever you play this on. Ice and Steel. Give +1/1 to your troops. Now this is all of your troops, presumably all of your troops in play. I usually don't like cards like this just because they're kind of very situational. Like they only really worth it when you have 2 or more troops on the board. But I don't know, maybe Space Wolves won't have a problem doing that and this card will become a must-have. Colbert Hunters. These guys are okay-ish. I mean, they have flank, which is nice, but they're flanking and not doing that much damage. But on the other hand, they actually combo nicely with Ice and Steel. So for 4 energy, you play Colbert Hunters and you play Ice and Steel. And then you've got this guy over here who's 3 attack and with flank for 2 energy. Well, for 4 energy basically, but you've also given +1 to any other troops you had on the board. So maybe that's a combo which would go well together. Sigvar squad. These guys I actually don't like. Yes, they have +2 attack during your turn, although 4 attack is nice, but they're also pretty weak because they only have 2 health. So they kind of would rely on a front line, I think, defending them. So maybe, yeah, if you've got a decent front line, you can play these guys behind it. But I haven't seen that many great front line cards in the Space Wolf deck. So unless you're putting neutral troops in for the front line, which you might be doing that, these guys seem to be weak compared to many of the other 2 energy cards for the Space Wolves. Of course, again, Sigvar squad with Ice and Steel would combo much better because then they go up to 3 health. But I think the Colbert Hunters look better than them. Stalk the Stars. This one is nice. It's give drop pod to the next Space Marine troop you play, which is always a cool ability. And then you can also draw a card out of your deck, so it helps to cycle through your deck. That seems pretty solid. Maybe it's a little bit conditional on having a troop who it's really worth giving drop pod to. Like the World Eaters have a card which gives drop pod as well, but it gives it to all the troops in hand. This only gives drop pods to 1 troop, but on the other hand it does cycle through your deck, so... yeah, I'll need to see how much of an effect that drop pod really tends to have for Space Wolves. Aldrim Hunters. We saw these guys before. They've got this little pack factor over here. So again, their stats are not great for 3 energy, but bear in mind that as soon as you put them in play, then you can trigger their pack ability. You don't have to wait until the next turn. So it's okay. I mean, these do look like they're a common card, so you don't expect this to be the greatest. I think that until your collection of Space Wolf cards builds up, these guys are probably going to be in there, and then you'll replace them with better cards. Curse of the Wulfing. I actually like this. Give +2/2 and Berserk to a friendly Astartes. So it's a huge buff, +2 attack for 3 energy. There's no conditions apart from that the target must be an Astarte. And this buff card recycles back into your deck when that unit dies. So I actually like it. I think that you're probably going to see a lot of people playing this card. Like 2/2 is a great, +2/+2 is a great buff. 3 energy is a reasonable cost for that. And the Berserk is not really much of a disadvantage because almost all the time you're acting with all your troops anyway. Emperor's Executioners. This is one of the first direct damage tactics we're seeing for the Space Wolves, and it's a great one. Deal 4 damage for 3 energy. Sons of Horus have a deal 4 damage card as well, although that costs 4 energy and it helps them to draw a card as well. So this has no card draw, so it's only 3 damage. Sorry, it's only a 3 energy. This is solid. You're going to definitely see this in every single deck because yeah, direct damage tactics are worth their price in gold. Horgan Pack. Ironically, they don't actually have the pack trait. Anyway, these guys heal 2 at the end of your turn. So they seem really sticky. In fact, as long as you only attack targets with 2 attack, like the enemy Warlord, these guys will keep healing up fully. You will... yeah, I think we're going to see these. And frankly, again, like you could probably play like Curse of the Wulfing on these guys, and then tougher targets get into scope for them. Jortan Stalker Squad. These guys are powerful looking. They have Bloodthirst, so they can attack twice, although that's going to kill them if they attack pretty much anything, because most things have at least 2 attack. They also have Ward, so they can survive until their next turn. So these are going to be seen a lot. They're kind of like the World Eater's bikes, except with Ward and 4 health. They're really hard to remove before they get to attack. So I think you're going to see a lot of these in play, and you're going to hate facing them. Valgyr's Seeker team is okay. It's 3 attack. It has 3 energy. It has 2 attack only, but it has sneak attack. I think, yeah, it's... It's sort of like the Raven Guard bikes, except with more health and cost more energy. So they sort of just seem averagey. I'm sure people will come up with a lot of sneaky uses for them. They'll probably combo really well with the Thrill of the Hunt ability as well. You can put that Seeker Squad in play and give them stealth or something like that. Wolf Claw. Give your Warlord +1 attack and Bloodthirst until your next turn. That's great. You're definitely going to see this one being used a lot because a Warlord with 3 attack and being able to attack twice can do a lot of things. But the really interesting part is it combos really well with Gegorfell Handed's ability. Because then what you can do is for 3 energy you can buff your attack to 3. For 2 energy you can attack again. And then because that card down there Wolfclaw gives you Bloodthirst, you can attack a second time with Gegorfell Handed. So essentially for 7 energy you can do 6 points of damage to a target of your choice. Or 3 points of damage to 2 targets. So that's a cool one. Excoriation Campaign. Deal 2 damage to enemy Warlord and adjacent units. So that's 4 energy to deal 6 points of damage. Yeah, I think you're going to see this one in use. Again, it's another direct damage tactic. And there's going to be a lot of times when all of the enemy units are basically the Warlord and 1 troop on each side. So, yeah, Excoriation Campaign looks like it's going to get used. It's a little expensive, but it's sort of comparable in cost, I guess, to Artillery Strike, which hits 3 targets as well, and costs 4 energy. I mean, actually, honestly, because Artillery Strike doesn't rely on the unit being next to the enemy Warlord, it might be better. Although Artillery Strike may not even hit the enemy Warlord if he's got 3 or more troops on the board. Fenris. Heal 2 to your units and give them ward for 1 turn. That's a powerful card, I think, because essentially you're making your units totally immune to targeted tactics, as well as healing them. 4 energy though, it does feel like it costs a lot. There might be other better things to do, but it does look valuable to me. Man, the Space Wolves looks like they have a lot of cards, a lot of good cards. It's going to be tough choosing between them. We're only at 4 energy and almost every card looks like it's good. Alright. First of the legendary cards, and look at this guy, he's a doozy. So, he costs 4 energy, and he only has 3 attack and 5 health, but he has ward, so he cannot be targeted directly, so you have to beat him to death with your Warlord or troops. But he also has this cool pack ability, and as I said, it seems that pack can be triggered as in the turn that the unit is deployed. So you put him on the board, you attack with your Warlord, and now he's a 4 attack, 5 health unit. You attack with your Warlord and 2 other units who are already on the board. Now he's a 6 attack, 5 health unit who can't be targeted with a direct damage or removal. So I think he looks really cool. And then next turn, if he survives, he attacks the enemy Warlord, he takes 2 points of damage, and then you attack the enemy Warlord with your own Warlord, and this guy heals back up. He looks sticky, I like it. He's gonna give people a bad time, I'm sure. Ragvar the Ray Slayers. So these guys are actually the new icon for the game. They've got ward and they have pack. They gain +1 attack, but only until your next turn. So this one's actually interesting because these guys don't really benefit from their pack effect on the turn you put them into play. I mean, I guess they'll have the higher attack during the enemy turn, so it's going to be harder for the enemy to remove them because they've got ward, so he can't use a tactic. He's got to attack them directly. So I guess yeah, they can benefit a little bit, but then the next turn you've got to they reset their attack value. You've got to do your pack effects all over again to buff them, and then they can attack. It's still not a bad ability. These guys look good as well. Wow. Saemurnder Rhino. This guy's a common card. It has frontlines. This is the first frontline unit we're seeing in the Space Wolves deck, and a 4 energy frontline with 5 health is not bad. And then for 1 energy, draw an Astartes from your deck. I think the Space Wolves have enough energy costing abilities on their Warlords that drawing cards from your deck isn't necessarily going to be a super high priority. The front line is nice if you have many of the weaker units. I don't know, I just feel that compared to the other cards, this one doesn't feel like such an essential need. But again, I haven't tried using the Space Wolves yet, so maybe I'll find that, you know what, they are missing front lines. But my gut feel so far is that Samander Rhino is sort of not one of the great ones here. Not one of the super great ones here. It's a good card in its own right, it's just that the other Space Wolf cards look better. Colbert Hunters. So these guys are 4 energy, but now they're coming in at only 3 at 3 health. And although they've got a decent pack ability here, deal 1 damage to a random enemy, and remember if you play them when the enemy warlord is alone on the board, that random enemy is the enemy warlord. And they've got 5 damage, but they don't have ward and they only have 3 health, so they're going to be primary targets for removal cards or by enemy units. So I think these guys are not going to get used that often just because their health is so low. Wolf Spirit. This is the first of the ship cards for the Space Wolves we're seeing over here. It costs 4 energy and it puts 3 Space Wolf cards into your hand and it adds Curse of the Wolf into your deck. I think that unless you find that you're running out of cards, this may not be a one to include. I'm not sure why it says drop pods. Maybe those troops come with drop pods and it just doesn't say that over here, or this one might just be a typo. But unless we find that Space Wolves are running out of cards, I think Wolf Spirit is not going to get used that much. Ansgar Longfangs. These guys are cool. They're sort of like the Pyroclast from the Salamanders, except they deal 2 damage to 1 target only, and then they can attack again. So you play these guys in your 5 energy turn, and then in your 6 energy turn you can use them to deal 6 damage. So if they survive, that's pretty cool. It gives you lots of options. So I think you will be seeing more of these guys. Fateful Weird. This is cool. Draw 3 cards. For every tactic drawn, give Survivor 1 to your Warlord. So if it looks like your deck has a fair number of tactics, this one could be pretty cool. My personal gut feel is because the troops for the Space Wolves are so good, most Space Wolf decks will probably be troop heavy, which means Fateful Weird is not going to be getting that much use, I think. Jurgen. This is the next frontline unit, and it has ward. And these guys I think are actually really good as a frontline unit, precisely because they have ward. So they're going to be hard to remove. You just can't use a tactic like breach or something to break through them. You actually have to attack them directly. So these guys are, yeah, these guys look solid as an inclusion in Space Wolf decks. Miskia Hunters. They've got Berserk and they've got wards, so they can't be hit with tactics. They've got decent attack. Their health is a little low, so I think that they're probably going to lose that 5 energy spot to Jurgen instead. Odin Command Squad. They've got Drop Squad. Oh, this is awesome. Look at that. You play these guards on the board, and then any other space Astartes you play, they also get drop pod. That's a neat ability. That's a really neat ability. I like that. I think you're going to see these in use. Huh. And their stats are not bad. Their average stats for 5 energy, and they've got this cool drop pod ability on top. Deathsworn Pack. Ooh, look at that. We have not seen this on a troop before. Any enemy troop they attack is destroyed. Wow. Ooh. That is super neat. Okay. On the other hand, they don't have ward, so as soon as these guys hit the board, they're going to be priority target number 1 for destruction. What you'll probably want to do is play Deathsworn Pack and then play, where's it gone, Canis Helix on top. And then that becomes a 7 attack, 6 health unit which is immune to direct damage. And then whenever they attack a troop, that troop gets destroyed. Wow. Alright. We'll need to see, like, if these guys show that they can survive to their turn, they can probably do some serious wreckage. Next legendary, Dionysian Spear. Give your Warlord +1 attack and stun enemies damage in combat. Yes, 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 1,000 yeses. If you have Dionysian Spear, you will be putting it into your deck. Being able to stun lock an enemy is fantastic. Wow, okay. Next is OP Gunnarsson. Overpowered Gunnarsson, otherwise known as Domar Gunnarsson. This is probably looking right now like one of the best legendary cards in the game. So, any one of his abilities would be cool. So he has Ward for himself. Now anyone he's played next to, including the enemy Warlord, has Ward as well. So he makes people immune to direct damage. And on top of that, for 1 energy, he can heal 3 health to a friendly unit, including the enemy Warlord. So the only way to get rid of Domar Gunnarsson is to put troops down on the board and beat him to death, or hit him with non-targeted tactics. That can be tough. This guy looks incredibly strong. I would not be surprised if you see him nerfed in some way over the next couple of weeks. I think if he gets nerfed, it's probably going to be losing the heal 3, or maybe losing his own ward. I don't know. Probably not his own ward. I think his heal 3 is the most likely one to get dropped. Ferengi Veterans. These guys are an expensive way of getting flank without much health. So the way to view them is more like as a removal card, but it's a pretty expensive removal card. So deal 7 damage for 6 health, for 6 energy rather, and then with only 5 health, they'll either die based on whatever they hit, or get easily removed the next turn. Aesir, it's a dreadnought for the Space Wolves. This is not bad. It has +3 during your turn, so 9 attack during your turn is great. With only, 7 health is average for 7 energy. He'll probably take, at the very least, a beating during the enemy turn, and then he'll die when he does his attack, but he should get to pull off his 9 energy at 9 damage attacks. So I think it's a pretty good card. Mjolnir Wolfguard. So these guys have frontline, and they have a pack effect where they heal 1. But they don't have ward, so they're vulnerable to removal. So I think they're inferior as a front line to Jurgen over here, who has ward. So I think these are not going to get used that much. And most of the time, expensive frontline units don't tend to see much play. Ragnarok. Space Wolves Battleship. Destroy an enemy troop and stun adjacent units. So this is the Space Wolves direct removal tactic, and it's pretty good. Yeah, I'm certain you're going to see 2 of these going into practically every deck, because removal is so very important in the game. And that extra effect here, stun adjacent units, is actually a pretty powerful one. Okay. Next up, Eltozar Skrin, another dreadnought. Now this guy is better. He's got ward, which makes him immune to all those anti-vehicle things like crack grenades and melta bombs. And he has a cool pack ability. He gains +2 attack. So remember, as soon as you play him on the board, if you attack with your Warlord, he immediately pumps up to a 7 damage unit. Then, assuming he survives to your next turn, which he's got a pretty good chance of doing, you attack with your Warlord again. Now he's a 9 damage unit. And then you attack with Eltozar Skrin and you lay down the herd. That's a really nice guy as a vehicle with ward. I think you're going to see him getting used a lot as well. Fenrisian Wolves. So this is a tactic. It puts Freki and Geri in play, or Geri in play. So who are Freki and Geri? So these are Leman Russ's wolves. So Freki the Swift is a wolf with flank, and he gains +1 attack for every damaged enemy. So you damage an enemy with a disposable unit, then you play that, and this guy comes in and he straight away has 5 attack and flank, which will probably help to finish targets. And Geri the Cunning has flank, and he stuns his target as well. So essentially, but the interesting thing is, these are flanks, so they cannot attack the enemy Warlord on the turn they go into play. So this is actually not a finishing card. It sort of finishes enemy troops, but not the enemy Warlord. coming in this late in the game at the 8 energy turn, usually it's where the end game is beginning, and trying to finish the enemy warlord tends to be preferred because the enemy themselves probably have some powerful abilities or units coming up. So it's a little bit of a hit and miss, I think. I suspect of the legendary cards, this might be one of the lesser used ones, because late in the game you're trying to finish the enemy warlord as opposed to his units. But we'll see. Thorleaf Wolfguard. Heal 1 to your warlord with pack. That's actually pretty cool. Like, if you imagine, like, your warlord is attacking the enemy warlord, right? Usually you take 2 damage, the enemy warlord takes 2 damage. With this guy in play, you'll only take 1 damage effectively, because as soon as you attack the enemy warlord, you heal 1 back. And if you have additional units which are attacking in that turn, that's going to heal your warlord too. So it's an interesting mechanic. I just think that at 8 energy, there's probably better things the Space Wolves will want to do than heal their own warlord. Pawn of Imgur, or whatever. Pack, deal 2 damage to random enemy. That's much more powerful. Potentially, like, if you put these guys into play after you've mostly maybe the enemy doesn't have that much left on the board and you've got a bunch of units. Say if you have 3 units on the board and you put these guys into play, then when you attack with your 3 units, you're dealing an extra 6 points of damage to the enemy board. So that could be powerful, but again, the energy cost of this unit is pretty high. I think it's, people who don't have the next card might go with this, but Corpse one is a nice one. Now this is the real finisher for the Space Wolves. It has it costs 10 energy, it has 8 attack but 11 health, but it also has shield. And so the only downside to this card is that it doesn't have, actually no, this isn't really a finisher actually. Sorry, I thought this had fast, I was wrong. Alright, so the way this one works is you put it onto the board. If it survives to the next turn, and that's a big if now because it does not have ward, but it does have 11 health, and it does have a shield as well. So it can take 1 hit without taking any damage. If it survives in the next turn, you draw a card, and if it is a troop, and it's probably going to be a troop because Space Wolves have really good troops and the decks will probably be troop heavy, you put that troop into play and give it fast, so then that troop can attack. So that's not as great a finisher as I initially thought. So it sort of really feels, if it survives 1 turn, its ability is effectively a finisher. You're putting in a bunch of troops with fast and you finish the enemy off. But in general, it kind of feels as though the Space Wolves, unlike many other factions, they don't have a powerful 1-turn finishing move, right? So they're more of a method of a build up the board and use that to finish the enemy type of faction, whereas many other factions will sort of aim to get the enemy down to low health and suddenly burst them into death with 1 or 2 cards. Space Wolves seem to lack that burst damage at the end, but they have an incredibly strong middle of the game with powerful units which are hard to remove from the board. So they're going to be really interesting to play as, and probably going to be terrifying to play against. Like, your games against your Space Wolves, I suspect, are going to come down to a knife edge, where you're trying to cut them down to enough health to use your finishing moves and end the game quickly before their powerful board presence just overwhelms you. Alright, so I hope you guys found this useful. In a couple of hours, I'm hopefully going to be uploading my first Space Wolves match video, and we'll see them in action. So if you haven't subscribed, please remember to subscribe and you get notified as soon as that one goes up. And so until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.